And it's back at Conversations. We are back. Hello, Summer. My bro, how you doing?
I'm good, good.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, man. It's been a minute.
Yes, it has.
Chaotic, busy life.
Yep. Getting, trying to keep body and soul together. It's been good so far, actually. I've got work coming
That's,
in, so kept myself busy with that.
that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Let's get right into it. We got like a backlog of topics here. Things we could talk about for days, but obviously we don't have that much time. But let's start with WWDC. Apple's biggest conference every year. They talk about the latest innovation, mostly with the operating systems across their product line. And in some cases, they talk about hardware. So this year, is there anything that stuck out to you? I'm sure there's a lot to talk about, but right off the top, like, I don't think, you know what, let's take a different approach. Let's start with from the beginning. They talked about Vision OS, right? So
Yeah.
did you
And
catch anything about Vision OS? Or did you hear about
like,
Vision OS 2.0?
I don't know, man. I think beyond the initial hype of the Vision Pro when it came out, it has kind
Mm-hmm.
of died down to me.
Yeah.
Like even when I go on YouTube and I see somebody making a YouTube video about Vision Pro, I'm not as
Yeah.
enthusiastic to click and watch, right? So I think
Right.
I don't know, but the hype, I guess maybe because it hasn't found like a compelling use case, and a compelling use case doesn't have to be like something work related or productivity related. It
Mm-hmm.
could be something fun, it could be something entertaining. But
Right.
everything we've seen so far, especially from like the initial promo stuff, the hype was cool at the beginning, just that initial novelty, of it being new.
Exactly.
But all
With
that
all the
has faded away.
gestures
Yeah,
and all the
all that
tech
has
they crammed into it. I
all
will
that
I
has
will
faded
say
away.
yes. You're absolutely right. And I feel like there've been rumors about Apple like dominating down and creating like a entry level vision device. You
Mhm.
said it would be a missed opportunity. They don't call it Vision Air, which I think would be a smart idea, but I don't know if they're gonna go down that route. I will say though, on their website, it doesn't just say Vision Pro right on the tab. It says Vision. So that's probably a
Oh,
hint.
I haven't even noticed that.
Yeah, I just noticed it recently because someone talked about it and I did a just like a double take just to confirm and it's like it just says Vision, right? Um, so one of the things they talked about, like OS 2.0, people can now like create spatial content from already existing content, right? So if I have
Hmm.
like an older photo that is not in 3D space, now with Vision OS 2.0, I can create the illusion of that 3D space, right? Which I think is awesome. Um, then what else did I notice from OS 2.0? Oh, they had this extended display like I don't know how many inch type screen that like an arc. Yes, they essentially increase the screen resolution for like your Mac throughput. So if you're using like a Mac and you're extending the display to your Vision Pro, you have significantly more screen real estate now. It made it significantly bigger. In the demo, it
Like
looked really
what
really
was
nice.
the size? What was the size prior?
Ooh. Oh, that's a
Because
good
like
question. I
yeah, like I mean, if you have, say, let's even be generous and say like 100 inches, 100
mm-hmm,
inches field of view, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, just that's pretty big, and if you're using
yeah,
it as a computer or even as an entertainment thing, right, for games,
mm-hmm,
videos, interactive content, whatever, that's pretty big. That like that fills
it's
up
huge.
your vision,
Yeah,
right? So
it
if you
really
extend it
does.
you extend it by, say, another 20 or 50 inches. The question is, how much more do you get out of it? Yeah, it might feel maybe a bit more immersive, but
You
like,
just
I
might,
feel like
yeah.
beyond, a certain size, you're not getting, like, you might be getting the numerical increase, but you might not be getting the
Mm-hmm.
feel of it, um,
Yeah.
to the same
Agreed.
extent
I do
numerically.
feel though that based on what I'm hearing from people who've been trying the beta, I don't actually know if that feature is already in the beta, but the way people talk about it, especially people who own it and commented on that announcement, they made it seem like it was a kind of a big deal. Uh,
Okay.
So I guess that's for people who already own the device and are looking to maybe extend. Because I can firmly remember people complained that the extensibility of like the Mac display to the Vision Pro felt limited, and they thought maybe it could be better. And so
Okay.
this looks like a step in the right direction, at least for them. And that's pretty much it about Vision Pro. There's other stuff that he talks about with APIs, dev stuff, and I'm like, we're not going to talk about all that stuff. Vision Pro is still cooking. It's not yet done. When it's done, we'll talk a little bit more about it. And
Yep.
straight to iOS, just straight to iOS. Um, Rearranging your home screen to the point where you can have like literally no app icon on the home screen. And I think one of the top comments that I saw on one of the, a lot of YouTubers cover this, right? And
Yeah.
you will see Apple announce a feature that probably doesn't even exist on Android yet, like the satellite texting or whatever. And people would text in, post a comment on YouTube talking about, yeah, Android fanboys are gonna come out now and say they had this since 1854 or something like that. I thought that was hilarious because that's always the trend. Like Apple announces something, you see somebody with like a keyboard warrior gets that we had it since iOS, Android OS 2, like and like, can we all just get along, But it's funny. And so this icon thing, just to circle back, is one of those things that, of course, has been on Android for aeons now,
Yep.
so to speak. And on the demo, these things look nice because they know what kind of app icons will behave the way they want it to behave and look good at the presentation. But then you give this to regular human beings, and they create the ugliest, most disgusting looking home screen you've ever seen. I don't know if you've seen anybody play around with it, but I've seen some images online. It's like, nah, people shouldn't be allowed to do this.
So I think it was how they implemented the dark mode and the tinting. So the tinting, and having done some UI UX work, there's something called like the contrast ratio, and
Hmm.
so there was something we were working on where we had to deal with like color on top of color,
Hmm.
and in order to get good contrast ratios, sorry, you have
Yeah,
to basically programmatically do it such that some colors will be on the whole color spectrum, some colors have
yeah,
to be automatically excluded. And then you also have to write it that some colors cannot be next to some other colors. Because if you are picking a random selection of colors,
yeah,
right, if you just tell the computer, pick any two colors, the computer can put, say, like bright yellow against dark yellow. In fact, no, the computer can put like two very close yellows next to each other, right?
yeah.
If it's truly random. And of course, that won't give you good enough contrast. So whatever you put on the screen becomes unreadable. So
Hmm.
they didn't really do it well, where they just did black background and then any color. And so someone will put this like
Yeah.
hyper saturated red, dark red, or blue, and then you get this
Hmm.
ugly mess. And
Yeah.
I think they were just hoping that, well, if you put a very dark blue against black, and
Hmm.
it's not clear, maybe you won't leave it like that. You put a lighter blue by yourself. You use your sense. But
Yeah.
most of those, like you said, most of those images look ugly as hell.
Yeah.
Even the dark mode doesn't look very appealing. But I think some
Hmm.
designers have written, um, like, to the design community at large how
Yeah.
to implement a proper dark mode icon that will still fit
Icon.
well.
Yeah. So I was gonna get to that. I feel like a lot of people are still catching up to updating their icons for these features, right? To the point where it's gonna be significantly harder to, don't quote me, uglify, right? So if you even try your darnest to make your home screen look ridiculous, maybe the software update, especially if you have automatic updates on, an update just comes to your phone and then the icons look good and kind of like preserve some kind of consistency throughout the operating
Yeah,
system. Another
that
feature
that
that
will
I
for
yeah, go
the that
ahead.
would be for the what do you call it now, the third party apps, because native
Yeah,
apps they
third
just
party.
default, they just did the default thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I get it, I'm going to leave all my icons on light mode. I'm not going to touch the tinting. I'm not going to touch
Yeah,
dark mode icons either. I'm not going to touch
yeah.
any of that.
I'm curious as to what I'll do because I um I usually hide icons by default, even though I had to put them on my home screen. But I only leave icons that I want to see, obviously, on my home screen, right? So I think I'm going to go even one step further and maybe have just like three or four, like just my email or whatever, and the entire home screen, and maybe just one widget. Um, and speaking of widgets, Control Center 2 got a very nice upgrade, and and now it looks like something that people can also uglify as well. And you can have pages of Control Center, and in those pages you can now expand and resize a control. And
Yeah,
now it's also open to third parties, so other developers can have stuff coming right through into Control Center, not just Apple. Because right now it's just all Apple stuff, the remotes,
yeah,
all that stuff. I thought that was really interesting. Having like your people, a lot of Tesla owners were just like rejoicing because the demo had like a Tesla, I think, a Tesla widget where you could like
yeah.
expand the thing, and then you could like start heating up your car in the winter from your widget like that. I thought that was really, really, really awesome.
Yeah, because there's some apps that maybe like you just open it, do one thing or click one button and close the
Yeah,
app back. It's
yeah,
perfect for things like that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't I
yeah.
don't I don't know how much use I'll get out of loading up Control Center with additional things. I like
Mm,
to keep things pretty minimal,
very
even though it
simple. Yeah.
sounds cliche, but yeah,
Yeah, I would argue the same. I will say though that I'm starting to get more into like automation, not just with shortcuts, but like other random automations. So I feel like that's where it's gonna come in. If you have a bunch of shortcuts and automations and you don't want to keep them in widgets, right? Maybe you're doing full
yeah,
on minimalist and you don't want to leave them in like widgets. You just like put them in your control center. You push one button and it runs a series of actions throughout maybe your house or your computer, your watch, your phone. I think that's where I'm gonna want to play around with it the most. And yeah, let's talk about iMessage. This one for me, I wrote an article. It's been many years now called "8 Things iMessage Should Learn from WhatsApp." And with every version of iOS, there's a new update to the message app that kind of like drops the counter from like 8 to like 3 to like whatever.
okay,
And text
okay,
formatting for me is big. Like
yeah,
I love being able to like format, strike through, like bold, underline, maybe not underline, not command you. But yeah, yeah, just seeing text formatting coming to iOS, like that's something I'm happy about. It sounds really, really goofy, but I just really like it.
yeah. Like
And
I think for instant messaging, you just
yeah,
need italics, bold, and strike through.
and strike
You'll be
through, yeah,
fine. Like
be
that
fine,
that's pretty much, you know.
yeah. And now those tapbacks, you and I use tapbacks a lot when we text, like exclaim, like,
Yeah,
whatever. And
yeah.
now instead of them just being this like default cookie cutter
Icons and glyphs.
icons, now they're like emojis and it's like do anything you want. So
Yeah.
tapbacks have been unleashed. It's almost like someone just went to the tapback basement, at the Apple HQ and just like opened the gates and just like let everything run free.
Because
And I
they
don't
saw
know.
what happened today and how Telegram does it. I think
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's like how the trickle of instant messaging features happens now. Is that it pops on Telegram first, then WhatsApp copies it, then
WhatsApp, and then everybody else adopts.
Apple then
Yeah.
trails much
That's the thing about
later.
what's that's this is off topic, but that's the Telegram, the way they push out updates. Sometimes you actually get overwhelmed.
Yeah, like
For me, at least, it's a lot.
it's the most full featured modern instant messaging app right now,
Yeah,
and their execution of features are actually like pretty well done. It can feel
yeah,
like
and
a
the
lot,
design
but
is pretty good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, that's the thing though. Like, I don't text enough on Telegram. Like, I find myself only installing Telegram when I need to talk to someone, and then I uninstall it. Like, I use Telegram like maybe 5 times a year. Um,
yeah.
but that's besides the point.
I
So
think
yeah,
that's
iMessage.
because WhatsApp took like already became people became already used to WhatsApp, so it was hard for
Mm-hmm.
Telegram to kind of usurp them. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And now I feel like they have like an open source project too, where they are giving away funding if you develop for like part of the project.
oh
It's like a
really?
Telegram org thing. Yes, I forget what it's called, but I can look it up and mention it later. Another thing that's like a cheat code like into iMessage is scheduled text.
Ah, yes, yes,
So
yes.
you and I were like 8 hours apart right now. There are times where I text you and I know you're not gonna get it until like in the next few hours. Heck, I can just schedule this, even though there's a good chance that I'm gonna be sleeping when you receive it, but it's all good, right? My job is done. And
Yep,
the
yep,
example they use is the birthday message. That one, that's a life hack,
yes,
you know?
yes.
Because you go to bed, you're like, I want to wish them happy birthday, and then you forget. Nope, never again. Now, just like schedule,
The
boom,
moment you
it's done.
remember it, you schedule it.
It's done. But guess what, though? Rumors have been flying that it's only going to work on iMessage because the
No,
schedule send,
no
it,
RTS.
no, it's not going to go to that. There's no green bubbles. And Apple's argument, because I feel like someone asked them on the showroom floor after Dub, their argument is like, yeah, the message, once you hit send, it goes to like an iCloud server. So you
Oh,
don't have to worry. So even if you lose network connectivity, it doesn't affect the delivery.
ah, okay, okay.
So, and they're
Makes sense.
like, we don't want to be sending stuff to Android from our iCloud server. Like, we don't even know what's happening over there. And that's, you mentioned RCS. You mentioned RCS because the way they talked about RCS, almost like, that cousin that you don't like seeing at parties because they just like make fun of you and then you never see them for like 3 years and then they make fun of you again. Like you don't want to just talk about them, like they don't exist to you. So they just talked
They
about RCS. Like, yeah, moving on.
like they barely mentioned it. They just said it like blah blah blah. We're doing this and blah blah blah. RCS cut and then next thing and they just and then when they now did that their grid of new features, they just put it in one
Yeah,
tiny corner. And I'm
just
like,
the tiny little
this is a much
corner that's relegated.
bigger deal that you guys are making it seem like, but because
I
you know
know.
what you guys did and what it took to get you to implement this, that's why you're treating it like this. It shows
Oh
how
man,
reluctant they were. How reluctant they were.
I'm
I'm glad
telling
we
you.
get RCS. I'm glad
I
RCS is
same,
it.
same, same. And yes, I corrected myself when I said underline prior, but yes, iMessage does come with underline. I think that's cool. I just checked some of my
Okay,
notes and I just seen that. So that's like one
okay.
bonus feature compared to the other competing services, which is kind of nice. Then another thing that before we talk about the crazy like build your own emoji stuff, messaging via satellite. I think this is pretty cool. Sure, Apple does
I
this
thought
thing where
this
you get it.
was
It's
a
been around for a
hardware thing.
while. It's
It
been
was a
around
hardware.
since I think 15 or was it 14 Pro?
Yeah, I think they launched it with maybe 14 Pro or 15, but I think
Yeah.
it's a hardware thing, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is. And for people who get new flagships now, I think they get like 2 years free before Apple starts charging them subscription for it.
Oh, so you have to subscribe for it. I thought it
Apparently,
was
because
like
they're
the kind of
probably gonna.
where you only have to use it in an emergency and maybe like the hardware would switch to it when there's no cell or Wi-Fi.
That could be the
That's,
case.
that's
Well,
how I thought it worked.
I remember vividly seeing a keynote for like I think it was 15 Pro announcement where they said it's free for like 2 years and then you pay after, unless they've since changed the policy.
Mm.
I don't think it's gonna be like free forever, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's available, you can save your life, but can I see the money? And people are not complaining right now because people who have been using it obviously using it for free. No one, I don't know people who's actually paid for it, but you end up in a
Right.
remote place, like you say, where there's like no network connectivity. Ping, ping, ping. You can, talk to family or maybe call emergency services. I don't know if you can talk to family, but um, yeah, that was pretty cool. And mail. So Google Gmail has been doing this for years. Another top commenting where it's like in Android users like, yeah, we've had this forever. I mean, iOS users use Gmail as well, so they know what Gmail sorting is like. There's primary,
Yeah.
there's general, and then there's like the what's promotions category, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yes, mail app in iOS is also getting that. I find that I always end up going back to mail app, even though I've tried Gmail, I've tried Outlook and I've tried the mail app, and I've also used Spark and other mail clients. However, like even though all these other apps work really well, my main issue with the Outlook app is sometimes like it takes a good minute to load, which I find
Mm.
weird. I don't usually put more than 5 accounts on there. Maybe that's too many. I don't know. But then you launch it, you have to give it a bit of a moment to like launch. Gmail, I actually don't have any problem with Gmail. Just I don't have that many Gmails that I want to be using. I just feel like if I'm going to be using the mail client, just put Gmail in it, right? It just works.
Mm-hmm.
But the new category feature is just one more, sprinkled dust of Apple Intelligence that we'll still talk about as time passes. What did you notice about? Did you when you saw that announcement? Were you like, oh, about time, or like, oh, cool, or like, whatever? The one for the
Uh,
mail.
I didn't care
You didn't care. You don't use
because
mail app that much.
I like the mail app, and I do
Yeah.
and people talk a lot about like mail app replacement apps.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge I have with that is I don't like having redundancy on my phone.
On your
So if I've
device.
got a
Yeah.
mail, yeah, so if I've got a mail app that I can't delete, then why am I having a second mail app? So I'm like, and then the mail app works fine for me. Like I'm not one of
Yeah.
those super advanced productivity hack email type users. My own is just
People who is
open
it
it.
Proton? What's that one they pay for? There's one people pay monthly, like just to check their email. They pay for it subscription. I'm like, nah, you good.
There are many ones.
There's a good
There's
amount.
one
Yeah,
superhuman. There's
superhuman. That's the one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, nah, I don't need all that. I just need to be able to receive the message and send the
Send
message.
receive.
As long yes, and as long as I can do attachments, images, zip
Mm-hmm.
files, PDFs, I'm good. So I use default mail app. When they announced that, I couldn't care less. Like
Mm. Yeah, that's just one feature for everyone. Hopefully, it serves us and at least get helps us be more productive. Um, so I think it's a good way to segue into Apple Intelligence. Besides all the other things that Apple talked about, like one thing I'm looking at here in my notes is offline like trail maps, which is wild because there's literally a service that I use sometimes. I don't have their app. I go on their website to look at hikes before I go. All trails. I'm sure you're familiar with them.
yeah,
And
I've heard.
Apple is just like integrating this into maps like for free. I'm like, that's someone's life. That's their bread and butter. That's their food.
Maybe today now.
I know Tyler's somewhere screaming, me first, me first. But yeah, there's quite a few services and products that this dub actually just like, put a
Yeah.
knife to their throat at least. So that's one of them. All trails and the other services that provide all this information for hikes. Yeah, you can you think of any other like product or service that dub affected?
The one you mentioned now, the emoji maker,
Yeah, I'm
you
sure
know,
there are people.
with Apple
Um,
Intelligence and all that. Although the emojis he made were ugly. Ah,
yes, and oh yeah, another thing because I don't use rectangle. Do I use rectangle? No, I use yeah, rectangle because I mix it up. There's two popular window arranging apps on Mac OS.
whereas
Rectangle is the free open source one. There's another popular one that's paid, and I never got that one. I actually forget the
I
name,
think that
but
was
people
called
swear by it.
Magnet.
Magnet, that's what it is. And
Yeah.
now that the tiling support has come natively into macOS. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're talking about macOS, but it's a very short segment, anyways. I feel like that's another thing that it's been affected significantly by Dub,
Yep.
and people talk about Grammarly because of Apple Intelligence. So
Yeah.
I guess we can just directly segue into Apple Intelligence. You saw the keynote. You saw how they presented themselves, how they talked about what they were going to be trying to accomplish on the wake of the Microsoft, you know, um, can we say controversy with their what was the thing called again? Microsoft products for
Copilot.
not Copilot or Copilot Plus, the one that actually scans your computer and then um
Yeah,
and
I think it was like
it's called
the.
Recall. Yeah, Microsoft
Oh,
Recall.
okay, 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 okay,
Yes,
okay.
Recall. So yeah, I feel like even if they were none the wiser, like obviously they always talk about privacy more than anything else at Apple, right? But the whole Microsoft controversy gave them even more ammo to make themselves look significantly better, even though technically they're doing exactly the same thing. So share with me your first like thoughts on Apple Intelligence.
So when I mean, everybody had already been speculating that Apple was going to do AI, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was hoping that their AI implementation would be a bit more subtle, right? But now I think it just crossed the line from being like subtle and stylish to being like very in your face. Like they put it on the home screen, they slapped it in anywhere you can type long form text. You can use it to do emoji. You can do and it was starting to look very messy and very gaudy. And then
Mm,
even the design of it with all these like bright color gradients everywhere, and like the entire thing will be on your screen. I'm like, ooh, this is way too much. Like, chill. So that was kind of how I felt. Then I was like, okay. And every time I hear like AI announcements, there are some things that I'm like, intuitively, I want to be able to do something with AI. But
mm.
these guys are not doing these type of things. So
Open
for
example.
instance,
Yeah.
yeah. So for instance, now, okay, I want to be able to, and some of these things are actually possible, but I want to be able to like maybe tell my phone now that okay, after this podcast episode, switch. I'm listening to it via a podcast app. Switch to Spotify and play my something something playlist. You
Mm,
get like just that type of natural language
mm-hmm,
instructing either your OS or apps to do stuff in a natural language way. Even if I have to type it, or even if it's going to like present me with a button to
mm-hmm,
press
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
to initiate that sort of thing. But then they just slap this chat GPT type, or you text something. And I think they missed an opportunity to do something with shortcuts, because shortcuts, like I like the idea of, like connecting different aspects of your phone to do stuff automatically and all that, but
right,
it never really
right.
caught on for me because I've tried some shortcuts, and it's easier to make a mistake. It's easier to get it wrong than to get it right with shortcuts.
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
it's that shouldn't be, especially for like the consumer stuff they are presenting to everybody. I mean, when they announced it, they put it on your home screen, say everybody can use this, and then it's the kind of thing where it's kind of an uphill task to get a hang of. So some of the things that you were expected to be able to do yourself manually with shortcuts are things that maybe Apple AI should have allowed you to do with like natural language.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of like my
That
initial
does sound
reaction.
like something I would expect this reborn Siri to do. The way you just described it, it sounds very basic, right? Like I'm listening to this stuff when he raps, launch this and do that. Because he talked about how you could talk just conversational in like sequences now and remember as
Yeah,
context, right?
yeah,
So honestly, I think we should look out for it. I'm not saying he can do it based on the demos. I don't know if he can, but it sounds like
yeah.
something he
We'll
should be
try
able
when
to
it
do.
comes out.
Yeah, we should play
Yeah.
around with it. Hopefully, we can because remember, a lot of these intelligent features are kind of like hidden behind newer processors, right? So,
Oh, that's true. I won't get it actually. I wouldn't get it
so you might have
unless
to upgrade your device.
I buy a new
It's
phone.
you know what's funny? You know what's funny? Like we talked
And
about it
the
in the
funny thing is,
house.
I think
Yeah.
that's even a good thing, because like how I was saying that it was a little too much, all the things they were throwing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, in a way, I'm kind of grateful if I hold on to my device for say 1 more year. I'm actually like kind of grateful I don't get inundated with all that AI stuff
All
all at
that
the go.
stuff, and you know,
Yeah,
over time, it's gonna be refined and probably significantly better. Um,
yeah.
I for one, though, the glow around the edge series, I kind of prefer it to the little circle series now.
Ooh, no, 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 no,
I
no,
do
not.
because now I'm thinking about because the devices they've been using. I know you and I have like slightly older devices, right? I want a 12 Pro, but the devices they've been using now are the bezels are significantly different from ours. So it's
Oh,
almost like
because
the like a concave bezel around the edges. So watching it like you're not gonna be watching it every time you summon Siri, obviously. But in the
yeah,
demo, it kind of looked like a decent implementation for me. And I'm sure there's probably gonna be a setting to turn it off where once you talk to it, it's like I don't want the flashing lights, just give me my responses type thing. Um
I hope
here's
so.
hoping. Here's hoping.
Because I didn't like what I saw. All those gradients, all this was too much. so
It's a lot
much.
of colors. And you and I were talking earlier before the show about how when they presented this thing in phases, it was unclear to people who weren't really paying attention that most of what Apple announced is literally Apple Intelligence and not all GPT stuff. The GPT stuff was at the end where they're like, if there's more advanced requests that Apple Intelligence cannot process, then you get a prompt. Do you want to search with GPT? And GPT, and then you have to give permission, right? You talked about that.
Yeah, I think so. I expected when you announced the AI stuff, I expected that they were basically like they're basically having their own AI company within themselves, right? So like an
Mm-hmm.
open AI or a cloud AI or which other AI company is there, that Apple
Anthropic.
had created. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought had happened.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, what they were doing was actually in three tiers. The first tier of Apple Intelligence is on device, so it's using your processor. It's
Mm-hmm.
using an LLM that has been written into the OS, natively. Probably should work offline. Um, that's the first tier, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
there's now the Apple Cloud Compute, where there's more complex models with more powerful GPUs and CPUs running the
Mm-hmm.
cloud at their own data centers to,
Apple
to
Silicon
like
strictly.
yeah to do more complex tasks
Mm-hmm.
and to do tasks that need to talk to the cloud or to Apple's online services. So that's the second tier. And then the third tier is now like things that the first tier and second tier can't do. They'll then offload it to ChatGPT. Now they did like they said that during the keynote,
The
but they
event,
didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, they didn't make it very clear. So it gave the impression that both the first tier and like the whole Apple Intelligence thing was like being backed by or powered by
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
As that raised a lot of like privacy concerns and all that. But
Right.
I still and then they said, oh, even if they are going to get to that third tier of ChatGPT, that um, they are always going to ask your permission before sending your info over to them for
Mm,
processing, and that they have things in place to ensure privacy and all that and all that. Anyway, I still have like I mean, seeing it being explained gives me a bit less concern than I did when it was first announced. But
right.
I'm still not entirely like comfortable with, you know, an integration between ChatGPT and every other thing on my phone. But we'll see
I
how
hear
it looks.
you. I hear you. Even though they explicitly try to let us know that, hey, your data is not stored. Nothing about your personal information is uploaded to like ChatGPT, and obviously Apple will try and say how strict they are about all of this stuff, knowing their history, right? And what I also thought initially was, man, I wonder how much this is costing Apple to like get people GPT 4.0 for free just because they want an iPhone 16 and
Apple,
15, right?
yeah,
And
Apple
in
has the
turn,
cash now. Do you know the profit
I
margin
know,
on each iPhone? Please, they can afford
I
it.
know. But guess what? Apparently, no money exchange hands.
Now
OpenAI is just, what's
that's
that?
creepy. That's creepy. If Apple isn't
No,
paying for it, then
Apple is kind of like paying in GPT exposure because they're like, look, OpenAI, you're gonna get more eyes on your
training.
product, on more products of people who very likely will stick to their device. They will not change operating systems for a long time. Majority don't, right? Um, and you're getting it for free. Apparently, Meta tried to pitch and try and get in on this, and Apple explicitly said nope because they're like, we know your history.
Oh,
Yeah, they wanted to pitch Llama as well. I actually don't know how true this is, but I've been seeing it on a couple of blogs, and they're like, Apple vehemently said no to Uncle Zuck. Like, nah, man, we don't. we don't want your stuff on our devices. We rather go. They had an option of going with Gemini versus um ChatGPT, and they ended up going with ChatGPT, which kind of like it kind of like swells up the drama a little bit because Google is paying Apple a ton of money to be the default search engine on iOS devices. I'm talking about in the billions, and now you have arguably Google's biggest competitor in search because people just go on GPT now and just like put search into it. They don't even care anymore, right? Um,
I would say
so
ChatGPT is the biggest competitor because I think a lot of people are even like doing searches on
Perplexity,
people like, well, okay, I could say so that ChatGPT is their biggest competitor, but it's just
them and
like this.
Perplexity, I think.
The search market right now has started to diffuse a bit. So people are now like, okay, like privacy conscious people are
Hmm.
using DuckDuckGo or SearchX.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, people who are on Microsoft systems, maybe they are using Bing because it's the default, and maybe
Hmm.
they're just not changing it to Google. Then for people who to use ChatGPT, they have to like go to the ChatGPT website or have the app installed, right?
Hmm.
Unlike doing a Google search, which is kind of like habitual.
It's
Um,
everywhere.
yeah, and another thing is some people are like doing searches straight into TikTok. Like some much younger people
Yo,
are doing. Yeah,
yes. TikTok is
so
actually a big competitor for Google, I should add. Yes.
the
Such a
search
huge
thing is that
competitor.
diffusing a bit. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. It is. And after Google's problematic, Gemini search queries and results that they're like, show me if like an American president from like 1800, and they'll like be a brother there with like an afro, and like, bruh, like I know you're trying to be diverse, bruh. I know you guys talk about DEI, bruh, but nah, this ain't it. This ain't it. Yeah. So Apple Intelligence, it seems like one of those things that, and when iOS 18 launches, all this stuff is actually going to be in beta. So I don't think we're going to see like a fully fledged like Apple Intelligence device until maybe spring 2025 or maybe even summer, right? Um, but it's going to be fun times ahead because this is supposed to be, according to analysts, the thing that kind of like leans Apple into like a new super cycle of device sales, because now people have a reason to upgrade their iPhones, because usually your iPhone gets like 7 to 8 years of upgrades. You really don't care about the newest, latest device. But now when you're
hmm
like, oh man, all this AI stuff, bro, like I gotta get on that new iPhone 16 or 17, And so people are
but
like, Apple's gonna sell more.
it's
It's
not
not
Jimmy
what?
like that at all. I said it's not
That's the
Jimmy
thing though.
like that
You're
at
like in a different. You don't live on a credit card, right? There's people
well,
who are
true.
spending. People who are spending USD and putting it on credit card, like, and then like T-Mobile is gonna come pitch to them that, hey, if you get this stuff, you get like a reduced phone bill. AT&T is doing the same, bro. Like it's gonna be ridiculous in the West, especially. But I know some people who are like paying cash for their phones are gonna be really humble. Um,
Excuse me.
and I get it. Yeah.
The thing is, if like if you've used or if you fancy using like the AI stuff in your
Mm-hmm.
day to day or frequently enough, like maybe you even get to use it once a week, but meaningfully,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then it might be worth the upgrade, right? But
Mm.
other than that, just hearing about it and hearing how cool it is, or a fancy stuff. Some people might get
Yeah.
caught on with that novelty, but I don't think it will trickle down to the rest of like to a significant. Yeah, well, never say never, but I mean, maybe I've grown past the age where new features shock me like that. Um, so far I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. I can't even judge you. Another thing people talked about is like customization of like those quick action buttons we have on the lock screen. One is a flashlight and the other one is like the camera.
Yep,
I rarely use the camera one because it's just easier for me to swipe from right to left, because that's a much faster gesture for me than pressing and holding that
but
button. So I feel like that's the only one I might change. But the flashlight one, I love where it's at, like it's muscle
yeah,
memory.
yeah.
I will say that people who messed around with the beta, said they cycled through like 100 apps or whatever, and they ended up coming back to the camera because they're like, oh my goodness, like I miss having this on the camera. You get what I'm saying? So, but for me, I
Yeah.
feel like the case would be different because I'm pretty sure I would rather swipe than
To,
launch the camera. Yeah,
uh,
swipe to open the camera because it's just like swipe and the camera is launched.
launching. Okay, so let me see how I use mine. So launching the camera from the home screen, I think it's 50-50. Sometimes I hit the button, sometimes I
Yeah,
swipe.
yeah.
I don't even know what circumstances makes me choose one or the other. It's just
Either or, yeah.
yeah, it's
It's
just
just
like
it just
spur of the moment. Yeah. I can't think of what I'd replace it with. I
oh
can't think
man.
of what like even the action button
Mm-hmm.
on the side of the 15 Pro.
15 Pro,
Um,
yeah.
you know, first of all, why did you create a versatile button that can do just one thing? Well, I guess you know,
Oh man, people have hacked it for like a shortcuts thing you talked about. Like,
yeah, yeah.
just put a shortcut and then you trigger like a cycle of events. Okay, we're running short on time here. Let's quickly breeze through the remaining topics. Dub was interesting. We saw some new features on iOS. The
The most
biggest one for
impressive
iPad
thing,
OS,
that math notes calculator.
yeah,
Yes,
math node calculator, which is like super intelligent. And one thing I don't like, especially me, that I kind of like calligraphy and I like my handwriting. This thing not only mimics your handwriting when it gives you answers, the math notes, but
yeah.
it kind of like makes your handwriting less crooked. So I feel
Oh,
like it
really?
modifies your handwriting. Yeah, because the examples that I saw in trying to create, like, you put 6 plus 3 equals, when it writes the 9 for you, the 6 and the 3 as well, and the plus sign adjust.
Oh,
So
really?
they look more legible. So even if you
Smoother.
write like yeah, they look kind of like smoother. But that's the only thing I know is very nitpicky because that's like a really, really, really awesome feature. But like I like my handwriting the way it is. I don't want Apple Intelligence writing for me. Thank you very much. But that's still
Yeah,
good.
I
So
don't mind. I mean, because it's math, like it's not like it's messing with like if I'm writing, like
mhm.
long form text, then I might have a problem with it. Although maybe not really, because my handwriting
Yeah,
is like chicken scratch anyway. But if it's with the math notes thing, I mean, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. For
yeah,
me, that was the standout feature in the whole WWDC. And that is like yeah, like that's a brilliant use of AI. And to
hmm
me, I was like, all these years of the iPad not having a calculator, and then them
yeah.
finally using a calculator that can do that, graphing calculator, you can
I
change
know.
variable, do all that. I was like, yes, okay, okay, you guys did it. Like you did it and you did it well, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it's really impressive. It's and to think this is like early days, for the user. Obviously, it's not early days for Apple because they've been working on it for a good amount of time now. But imagine how much better this can get for like the user down the road. It's only gonna get better. All right, let's talk quickly about Figma. They had the Figma conference recently. What's it called again? The Figma conference. I forget what it's called.
Figma
Um,
config.
Config, yes. And after, their failed acquisition by Adobe, they've moved on to greater things, and they, like other companies, have started integrating AI into their products. Um, I don't know if that's going to be the highlight of the event for me, though. The highlight, the biggest talking point, I think, was the redesign of the UI, which is like a scary look for like the average Joe. For them, it was scary, right? Because you didn't want to change your UI. You're literally a UX tool design company,
Hmm.
and people already live and breathe in your interface. Like, you change the UI, like, it might mess around with their workflow. But they made it so that you could always go back to the old look if you don't want to
Oh, they
opt in.
did. Okay, that's good.
Yes,
That's
for now. So like, so if you want to get used to it over time, get used to it over time. But I think there'll be a time where it's gonna be mandatory. When I saw the UI, it reminded me of like a mobile tool. You know how you have like tool set down at the bottom row of like is that how
yeah.
Procreate works?
Like
Yeah. So it's kind of
well,
like, are they
Procreate
going to Procreate has a
at the top.
drawer under yeah, on the top, and then the fly out drawer that comes out from the right. Um, what I was thinking about was how a lot of mobile design tools have this. So are they going to make the mobile Figma tool more robust than just like what it is right now? Who knows? You never know, right? Um, then they talked about AI stuff, and as just like everyone else, they said they will be using your data to train models. Or they openly said it that we want to be open about this. However, if you have, I think, a NGO or a paid enterprise account, it's turned off by default because people might have proprietary apps or whatever. But if you're on a
Hmm.
free account, it's turned on by default, which you can turn off. And so they're gonna be so because they have prompts now within Figma with the AI
Yeah.
in beta, like give me a mock-up of like a sports betting app for maybe baseball or whatever, right? And it's gonna mock up for you. So you can imagine a design tool. I was like, is this supposed to be a joke on the word irony, or are they just like being intentional about like this is the future of design? I don't know which is which because it's like if you're working in a design tool that's supposed to create the most original of ideas, how are you creating prompts to give you tools based on other people's pre-existing designs by default, like, but anyways, I want your take on that, honestly.
So I've already like begun this journey of being disenchanted with, you know, design pretty much, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um it's like making a design tool for people who don't really enjoy design. Now, of course, all the tools are still there, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
AI stuff should be used as like a jump off point.
Yeah.
So
Just.
maybe think of it as your low fidelity mockup before you now do
Mm-hmm.
your high fidelity instead of doing it from scratch. Now,
Yeah.
personally, I kind of enjoy the process of doing the low fidelity stuff. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the low fidelity stuff is more enjoyable because that's where you're coming up with something,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to doing the high fidelity stuff where, yeah, that's where you're now coming up with like style,
That's
color,
the
and things
real
like
work. There might be pressure involved.
that. Yeah. So, um, I there's you have to be smart in using it. You can't just like type a prompt. Well, I guess some companies might try to like just type a prompt, select a theme, and hand it off to developers to maybe change
Mm,
a few variables and then hand it off to developers. If you do that, that's your business. I guess maybe some people might be concerned about job loss for designers or whatever, but you're going to
mm,
get a slew of trash copy and paste apps, and
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
would wear out very quickly. The other thing I didn't like was I don't like the floating panels. I like the
mm.
panels to be docked to the edges so that I know that okay, the canvas is like separate from the tool set. And then the floating bar at the bottom, I prefer it to be at the top. At the bottom is too close to the dock, so you can mistakenly hit something. I don't know. Maybe it's just the being used to the old way. Maybe if it had launched like this, maybe we would have gotten used to it and it wouldn't bother us that much. But
Maybe, yeah.
because I remember
All
back
right.
when we were using Photoshop, one of the early versions of Photoshop, like CS2 or whatever, right? Uh, it had floating panels as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember one of the things I was hoping every time a new version of Photoshop came out was for docs panels. I think it was in version 3 or 4 that they now introduced dock panels, and I was like, yes, finally, Photoshop that looks new.
Finally,
So
yeah.
I'm not that big a fan of floating panels.
No worries. All right, well noted. Well noted. We're almost out of time, so I'm just gonna breeze through the next couple of topics here. One is sticking with Adobe. They're in trouble on two different fronts. Obviously, there's one where the U.S. government is suing them for like bad behavior with pricing and price gouging, indirectly by giving people the wrong impression about what they're signing up for. Where they make it seem like
Hmm.
you're signing up for a monthly fee and then it's an annual. Then when you have to cancel, you pay a cancellation fee. I, for one,
Hmm.
have fallen victim for this, and I've paid Adobe money to cancel before, which is the most ridiculous thing. So I'm happy this is going to court. And it's unprecedented because they actually have names of executives at Adobe that they are holding as scapegoats. So they cannot hide behind LLC anymore, which is fun. Sticking with Adobe, they also got in trouble, kind of sort of, with how they want to be scraping people's artwork for AI, kind of like without their consent, obviously, like saying, "Hey, everything you post belongs to us." And Instagram is in the same hot water, so I'm really hoping someone steps in quickly. And I don't know how comfortable people are with posting their work on IG, for now, and that's just something we should keep an eye on closely. Uh,
Yeah. So
Canva
there
and
are tools.
Affinity. Okay, sorry,
There
go
are
ahead.
tools. Yeah, there are tools to like. Although those tools don't like the effectiveness of those tools is still very variable, but there's tools called Glaze and Nightshade. I think they're both made by the same, maybe like MIT open source something something. I don't know. I don't
Oh
remember
yeah,
the
it's to
details,
be kind of
but
like
yeah,
protect your
like
work.
poisons, yeah, or so that when the AI tries to scrape it, they get fuzzy or blurred
That'll be
info.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
curious to see how
um,
that works. Would love to test that.
yeah.
Um,
But I think that's very, very underhanded what Adobe's trying to do. Like stuff that you're working on inside an application that you're paid for, they want to now scrape it to train their AI models. That's
I
very,
know,
very
I
bad.
know.
Very
It's almost
bad
like people are
behavior.
handing them money and selling them their soul at the same time, which is ridiculous. I'm already paying to not have my soul sold, right? But anyways, it's yeah, Adobe is one company that just like keeps asking itself like, in what way can we get even more evil? So
I
there's
guess
that.
I guess one thing I should add is, hey, if you're tired of Adobe, try Affinity, um, Affinity Studio. I mean Affinity Designer, Affinity Publisher, Affinity
Designer.
Photo.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
great, very good alternatives. I
Very good.
had just when it went
Yeah.
subscription and I went for Affinity, and I haven't looked back
Never
since.
look back. That's dope. I will also add like there's alternatives for pretty much everything that Adobe makes, except maybe After Effects. It's very difficult to replace because the other
Yeah.
compositing and VFX software that's available in the market are node based.
Mm,
Adobe After Effects is timeline slash is based on
later.
layers, and so it's the learning curve to transition might be harder, but they exist. It's possible. And two other companies, maybe three, we should talk about. Canva acquired Affinity, we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Canva has a free tier. It's been more than sufficient for me. I do for a lot of things. I do know that they also have a paid tier and they have a subscription model versus Affinity, which is like a one-time license purchase. So I'm curious to see if any of the Canvas culture kind of goes that route, because on the one hand, the good side of their culture, which is free accounts for nonprofits, is moving over now to Affinity as well. So
Oh,
Affinity
really?
is,
I didn't know
yep,
that.
yeah. I thought that was impressive, but I think that's just a way to kind of like calm us down when they start paying, when they start charging us for Affinity, because I feel like Affinity now is like they're gonna be like, hey,
No.
here's how much it costs per month.
So I mean, if Affinity wants to introduce a subscription model in addition to their one-time payment or their major updates payment model, I'd be fine with that if that subscription model comes with additional features, or it says, okay, you know what, you can use this for a much smaller fee. Maybe, for
Mm,
instance, you're working on a project and you only need to use our application for 6 months. So you pay for 6 months, you're done with your project, you end it, blah, blah. But the
mm,
perpetual license and the yearly update, the major update license model that they currently have should remain. If they do
should.
what Adobe did, which is get rid of a one-time payment and replace it with pure subscription with
Mm-hmm.
all the underhanded cancellation fee nonsense, increasing price, bundling things, and all the mess that Adobe made of their own
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
revenue model, then we just get back to square one and we start hating Affinity the way we hate Adobe now. So
Yeah, people are obviously gonna
I
point. People will point out the
fingers.
fingers at Canva if that happens.
Oh,
Um,
of course, of course.
but yeah. So last but definitely not least, this one is actually kind of like a downer. There's a bunch of companies just like exiting Nigeria, and one of the major market leaders in Microsoft just divested, costing a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities. It's one of those things that's like, will they ever come back?
Yeah, that like it's it's evident that over the past 8 to 9 years,
Mm,
the Nigerian economy has been on a steady decline. The past administration made a mess of everything, And this administration seems to be basically towing that same, line. I mean, same
Mm-hmm.
parties, same ideologies, on how to run an economy. They are repeating some mistakes that they made and they should have learned from and all that. So,
Mm.
um, and companies like stability, and they also like to see that they are doing some sensible things, right? I mean, nobody's expecting you know an overnight thing. Nobody's expecting some overnight transformation. But
Mm-hmm.
if they
Mm-hmm.
see that the things you are doing in your country are not making sense, and it's not making sense for their business, then you can't beg them to stay, you can't force them to stay. They're going to pack their load and go. And if they're going to cut
Facts.
jobs to do that, they're going to do it. Like business is going business.
Yeah.
So it's painful to see. Uh, I mean, a whole Microsoft coming and setting up shop in Nigeria was a good marker of progress. But
It
for
was.
them to now say, I mean, this is a company that is trillion dollar company. For them to
It's
say,
still
it's not,
currently the most valuable company in the world as we speak right now.
yeah. So for them to say it's not worth it, and I'm sure like the cost of the Nigerian office is a drop in the ocean of Microsoft total operations.
Oh
But
yeah.
for them to still consider that worth cutting off just
Yeah.
tells you is a huge indictment of how the local economy is being run.
It's crazy that we're just talking about how there's no Xbox Live in Nigeria, even though Microsoft has a presence in Nigeria. We didn't know they were on their way out. There are people, there are
Uh,
Xbox gamers back home who have to use some kind of like taped together VPN to try and game online. And
for
now,
real.
like, there's just like it's ridiculous, you know? And now it's like, it's even worse because the entire company is exiting. It's you and I both know people who are directly affected by this, which makes it even sadder. And I mean, they're brilliant people. I'm sure they'll move on to like even bigger things. But yeah, I hope we don't have to do too many of these because if we sat down here and talked about all the companies that have left, it will take like
In,
3 episodes.
uh,
It will take forever, and we won't stop counting names. So hopefully we get some good news in the coming weeks. Maybe we'll see something change. Maybe we'll see a new company come in. Maybe we'll see new opportunities. We'll talk about it as well on this show, right? But yeah, this has been mostly a WWDC themed episode. I think it's been a fun one.
mhm.
So yeah, until next time when we talk again, this has been Backyard Conversations. Remember to
Yeah.
give us all those 5-star reviews where you listen. There's no more Google podcasts. They shut that whole thing down. So it's gonna be
But you
on
can listen in
this.
YouTube music,
Yeah, it's gonna be
right?
in music/YouTube. Yeah. So it's gonna be. I think they don't cancel YouTube Music as well. Um, so yeah, remember Apple Podcasts where you can find us on Spotify, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. This has been Backyard Conversations, and we are out.